Hello everyone, welcome back. So in one of my recent videos, I talked about how I thought for the longest time that I didn't have comfort reads, or that sentiment really didn't resonate with me, and how recently I have been thinking about that and realizing that that is not the case, that I do actually have some books that qualify as comfort reads to me, even though I had never really thought about them that way. And some of them are not books that you would expect to be comfort reads. And so I thought that I would do a few videos showcasing individual books that count as comfort reads for me. And I thought that I would start with one of the strangest ones right out of the gate, which is the 1984 to 85 Guide to Country New England Inns by Anthony Hitchcock and Gene Lindgren. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, what? What do you mean? That's not a comfort read. That's a guide to inns from the 80s. It's wildly out of date. It's not, there's nothing comforting about that. Well, I got some news for you. It's one of my comfort reads, and I'm surprised that I don't have 15 of these. So let's read the back here. Country Inns of America, which is this series, I'm guessing. All over America, travelers are discovering the special delight of America's historic country inns. For a friendly welcome, for a taste of local color, for a restful, home-like atmosphere, for a scenic location, and frequently for the best food in town, you can't do better than an inn. Wherever you travel in America, the complete Traveler's Companions are your best guide to hundreds and hundreds of little-known, out-of-the-way inns, lodges, and historic hotels where you can escape the daily humdrum and feel like an honored guest. So experience a refreshingly new, remarkably old way to travel. There's a country inn waiting for you now. So why do I find this comforting? Why do I find a 40-year-old book on country inns comforting? I don't know. Maybe it's the illustrations, and some of them have pictures, and maybe it is just the writer in me. You know, I've talked about this before. I wrote a book when I was younger. I wrote another half of a book, both unpublished, one unfinished, of course. And when I was very young, I wanted to be a writer, and I wrote all through my teen years up until I was about 25, and I never published anything. I wasn't really brave enough to publish anything. I'm very different now than I was when I was younger, and I think that I harbor a desire to, or I guess you could call it a fantasy, to write sort of mystery novels that take place on like cruise ships, that take place in country inns, and just to have fun, you know? And all the shows I watch, they always have a segment in a country inn, you know, the sitcoms, the dramas from the 70s, 80s, 60s, etc. Either they're haunted, or maybe, you know, like my mom really likes Murder, She Wrote. And so Jessica Fletcher is always going to a New England inn, and somebody is always being killed, and secretly, of course, it's Jessica Fletcher, but I don't want to get into that because that is a rabbit hole there. And is Jessica Fletcher killing people and then framing them, or are these books that Jessica Fletcher is writing, or is Jessica Fletcher is like the Jessica Fletcher who's typing in the beginning in the intro, is she writing about herself in these adventures and they're not even really happening? Or anyway, that's a lot of fun. But there is something comforting about a book like this, and I'm not sure what it is. Let's read an intro here, or an entry here, and see perhaps why it might be comforting. Well, if I can find one. They're on every page, but I thought I would find an interesting looking one. Maybe so these are bigger hotels in the middle of towns, and also rural inns. Well, let's see. Why is it you can never find the one you want to find whenever you're doing a video, but you can find it so easily when you're not making a video? Here's one. Here's an interesting one right here. Morrill Place, 209 High Street, Newburyport, Massachusetts. Keeper Roseanne Hunter, open all year. A number of New England inns once belonged to sea captains. Morrill Place was owned by 3. It is no surprise, therefore, to discover a widow's walk atop this 3-story federal home built by Captain William Hoyt in 1806. 30 years later, the house was purchased by Henry W. Kinsman, a junior law partner of Daniel Webster's, and in the years that followed, Webster was a frequent guest there. The name Morrill Place derives from the Morrill family, which made the house at the corner of High and Johnson Streets its home from 1897 until 1979, before it became an inn. 10 of Morrill Place's 22 rooms are guest rooms, where canopied brass and pineapple 4-poster beds are the rule. The guest and public rooms are furnished with antiques, mostly of the Federal period, in keeping with the house. There are a formal front parlor and a library, as well as summer and winter porches that enjoy views of the inn's 2.5 acres of landscaped grounds. The inn's music room has both a square grand piano and a 1910 Steinway. Accommodations: 10 rooms with shared bath, 1 with half bath. Driving instructions: take I-95 to Route 113 and proceed eastward toward town. The inn is on the right, about 2 miles from the exit. And that's all. That's all it says. A lot of times it'll say like no animals, no kids under 12 or something like that. Or it'll have details of the owner, and a lot of them have, like, they don't have a breakfast or a lunch, but they'll have a dinner. Some of them have a restaurant attached, and there'll be like a lunch but no dinner. And some of the rules sometimes about when the house closes and things like that, or when it's open. Some of them are only open for a few months out of the year. And it is just a complete breeding ground for thoughts about mysteries and horror novels and just all these thoughts. It is fun for me to think of plots for books and characters for books, but I don't write anymore, and I probably should. I have come to the point in my life where I like to think about plots and characters and to think them out in my head, but the writing itself, I once likened writing to walking up an endless sand dune for me, because it seems like I can never find the right word when I need it, even though when I don't need it, I can find it. And the actual writing process became so difficult for me that it was easier for me to not write. And maybe now that I'm older, I might feel differently about that. I don't know. So anyway, this has gone on long enough. I'm rambling. I apologize for rambling. But this is one of my comfort reads. Country New England Inns, 1984 to 85. How many of these places are still open? How many of them are still standing? How many of the original owners are the owners in this book? How many of them are still alive? Are any of them still running these places? It's really interesting to me. And anyway, I want to thank you for joining me for this very rambly video. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Do you have any books like this that are your comfort reads? Or have you never thought of a book like this being a comfort read? Like I said, I don't know why I don't have 15 or 20 of these, because I just love them. And I want to thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.